were the reproducer of the whole human race, to say it exhaustive. And I had said that women should get paid for that work. We should have wages for that housework, since we reproduce all the workers of the world, among others, also the employers.
That was Selma James speaking on behalf of the International Wages for Homeworkers campaign. In this episode, we ask ourselves, are we raising a generation of women who are not confident in their body image and aspire to an image of perfection? And now, back to Selma.
We want to live for others, but we also want to live for ourselves. And we can and have a right to that today. We have a right to be supported in the work that we do, to have help in the work, to organize ourselves, organized but paid for elsewhere by the state instead of the military budget, for example, to organize childcare and other help as part of the community. Now, I'm an anti-capitalist, I have to tell you that first off. Yes. I think I have some company in this audience. The thing about capitalism is that it does not start with people. It starts with profit and uses people organizes people at the same moment as they organize things, and in the same way. They find out how production can go on, and then they put us to doing it the way they have devised that they will get profit from. How we spend our lives is of no interest to them, and our children are of no interest to them except as future workers and future soldiers. That's what we don't want that. We want a society of carers, all of us, women, men, children, older, younger, every race, every religion, or none, everywhere. That's the society we want. That's a society we want to build, and we can only begin to build that, it seems to me, if we, as women and as men, demand that caring, that people, that the welfare of human beings and animals and the planet and the trees, that all of it has to be the first priority, not the last, afterthought. Oh yes, we better get some childcare for these women, otherwise they won't turn up for work on Monday. No. What do our children need? Who do our children need? What kind of community are we building for them? Are we building a society as we have now, where when you bring your child to school at the age of 3 or 4, the competition begins with every other child in the class? That's what the society is that we as mothers and as fathers have to defend and support and push our children into. We want to reject that. We are building a movement in this country precisely for the purpose of rejecting that kind of competition for our children and for ourselves, it seems to me. And we as women, now this is a very important point and what I want to speak about, we as women must organize ourselves respecting the work that we have done and that we continue to do, and demand help, support, and payment for. That's my view. That's an important part of what we have to do.
She must know how to set her table attractively. She must know how to make her home comfortable and inviting. She must know the worth of labor-saving devices and how best to conserve her time and energy. She must know clothes, how to buy and how to make them. She must face death to bring children into the world. She must raise them, care for them, and pilot them safely to the threshold of manhood and womanhood.
Now I want to speak, I know you are organizers. I know you have done wonderful work in this area. Sean was telling me, I have a problem with my eyes, but Sean was reading, Sean Evans, who came with me from the Global Women's Strike, was telling me about the work that you have done, saving libraries, preventing cuts. I spoke with a very lovely sister about helping refugees and asylum seekers. And doing all the work of making a society and of changing the society and the standards of that society. I congratulate you. I can only respond to that by telling you about our organizing. I'm going to be brief to the point because otherwise there won't be enough time for an exchange. When the Wages for Housework campaign began in 1972, we had a big fight in the women's movement about whether women should go out to work or they wouldn't be institutionalized in their home if they got money. And we always said we're institutionalized in the home because we don't have money. Some of us don't have bus fare. You know, the idea that money is going to corrupt us or lead us not to go out. It was a fantasy which I never could understand. That is beyond my understanding. Anyway, I left that one. But by 1975, some lesbian women said they wanted to join the Wages for Housework campaign because they could not afford to have children and live a lesbian life. And not only that, they wanted to live with other women, but the government took their children if they were lesbian. I don't know if you remember that. Some of it must still go on. Much about children will deal with that. And we said, fine, but you have to accept all the things that we stand for. You know, we stand for family allowance, which is now child benefit. You know, we stand for pay equity, not only equal pay, but equity, so that whatever job we do and men do, we get the same, whatever the job is, we get the same rate for the job depending on the value of the work that each of us does. That we were demanding payment from the state, first of all from the military budget, that women must be paid for housework. They said, fine, but we have our own demands as lesbians. We said, no. We said, no, what do you mean your own demand? We support what you stand for. Therefore, why do you need something other? And we call that separatism, like this particular set of people or that particular set of people. You know, they have something very special. I said that, we all said, that if lesbian women want to be free, then everybody in this campaign stands for that. Nobody only lesbian women stand for that. We all have to stand for that. And then Black Women for Wages for Housework formed. And we said, we are all anti-racist. You will give leadership on this, and we will be part of the struggle against racism. Or we will be part of the struggle for liberation for lesbian women. Or the next group, we will be part of the struggle for sex workers, prostitutes, the English collective of prostitute form. We stand for you're not being arrested and exploited and harassed by the police and other things and have your children taken away because this is the way you support them because you can't get a better job than the one you have. And the women in the sex worker organization wrote a paper called For Prostitutes Against Prostitution. We are not our work. We are for the people who do the work. We are not for the work. And that goes across the board, whatever our job is, unless it's something that we want to do. And if we're lucky, get paid for. And so that's how we began to build what we stood for as women came into the organization and said, I need this, this is my perspective as a single mother, you know, this is my perspective as a woman with disabilities and the men whom I work with disabilities. All of that, each of those became part of the total perspective of the Wages for Housework campaign. And we now have a women's center, and we were always international, by the way. We started immediately as 4 women in 4 different countries. That was the whole campaign. But we grew from that. We have a base in India of people, tribal and Dalit women, who organized together for pay equity and against rape, a tremendously important indulgence of the employers, but at the same time also, you know, a way of disciplining the women and paying them less. Rape is a very, we can discuss this for the rest of the evening if there was time, a very particular form of exploitation and discipline of women. It starts in the home, by the way. Rape in marriage, we fought for 15 years before we were able to finally make it a crime, make it acknowledged as a crime, because it was always a crime. And so we have a women's center in London. Maybe you'd like to form one here. And it's called the Crossroads Women's Center. And there are a number of organizations there, including an organization of men called Payday, which works with prisoners, with the anti-deportation movement, and which works for men and women who try not to be soldiers. There are refuseniks, for example, in Israel. You know, the Israeli apartheid state has a very forceful army with some of the most modern killing machines, which they have spent 10% of the universities in Israel work on arms invention and production. They're a very highly militarized society, but there are men and women who refuse to be part of the repression of the Palestinians, and there are others from all over the world that the men work with and try to keep them informed, each informed of what others are doing in other countries. So that's one of the organizations at the center. There's a folder here about the center that you can see later. But one of the most vital organizations at the center is the All African Women's Group, which has mostly African women, but there are some from the West Indies and some also from Eastern Europe and from India, etc. But almost all the women are from Africa, asylum seekers, organizing with collective self-help to fight their own cases with the support of Legal Action for Women, one of the organizations that works. We don't call ourselves the Wages for Housework campaign. We call ourselves the Global Women's Strike from the year 2000, but the Wages for Housework campaign just coordinates the work of the organizations at the center. Okay, I wanted to tell you that because I feel that what you believe is what you do. You can give me a wonderful line and do nothing. It doesn't impress, it doesn't change the world. But I thought you might be interested in the way that we organize and might find it useful to think about and to work out at a different point. I want to make one final point, then I'll shut up. We live at a very crucial moment. Not only is it dangerous, this lunatic in the United States who's the leader of the free world. What kind of a free world is that? We don't want that leader. We don't have the choice to refuse him. But at the same time, we live in a world with a lot of promise, especially since there is a great movement growing, and it is still growing, which was called out by Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell. It doesn't mean I don't respect and really wish to support others from other parties. I know you're not party political, and I agree. I think it's wonderful that you don't turn people away from one party or another. The Greens have a lot to offer, and that beautiful woman from Plaid Cymru, who's invited us and the film to speak in the Ronda, thrilling enough, is really a very fine person and someone that has a lot to contribute. But the movement is what matters. And because the movement is our way as the grassroots of changing the world. You can't do it without a movement. There's no great leader that's going to come and save us. We tried that, it fails. We can't trust 1 or 10 or 100 people, but thousands who have their heads screwed on, who bring together various sectors of the society, so all sectors of the society are expressing their own needs and have the support of everyone else in the society to get their needs satisfied, not at others' expense, but at the expense of those who have stolen the wealth from us. That's what changes the world, and we have a chance for such a movement right now. We're living in this precious moment, which we took 40 years from the time that Thatcher, came into power and began her trickle-down or something theory. It was really the great theft that she was fronting for. And so we have to look at that movement and find out how to support it, how to participate in it increasingly. I know that we all are participating, but how to strengthen it and how to keep it from the careerists who look at it and say, oh, there's a job for me here. Yes. I could become this, that, or the other, and I'll say whatever is needed and work with whoever will work with me. But they're not interested in the movement except to destroy it on the back of their ambition. And that's something that we women are very good at spotting. I hope you men will take their word for it. You have to keep your minds open on that. Okay, and that's what I think, is terribly important now, and what we can, I hope, work together ongoingly about. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hello, and I'm very sorry I'm late, so I missed the beginning of the meeting, but can I first say I am probably not the only one to say I'm very excited to meet you, and I'm glad you're here. So, and I think the whole evening was kind of, it started with the Ronda, and you gave us an overview of your organizing now, and I think it'd be very interesting to see how we apply it to today in times of universal credit and where unpaid work is again under threat. But I will shut up now. I'm just here to share the meeting, be the bad cop, and make sure everyone gets a say. So I hope we can hear everyone, because I think we only have got one microphone. Is that right? Anyway, so I would suggest we take 3 questions, give Selma a chance to answer them, and then go from there. So, Yasmin?
Hi.
If I don't hear, you have to help me.
Okay.
I found what you said about the movement being a way to change the world is really, really powerful.
What did she say she found what powerful?
What can we do to ensure that our spaces in Cardiff and across everywhere are accessible for people of colour, women, and especially women of colour, in light of racism and misogyny against Black and minority ethnic women?
So how can we make it more, make sure it's inclusive of people of colour in all the movement?
Shall I just answer that, or shall I wait for a few questions?
Shall we have 3 questions, or?
Well, I think that's such a crucial question, maybe I should answer it, yes. The only people who can guarantee that Black people and other people of color will be accepted is Black people and other people of color. You know, the women of color in the global women's strike wrote a statement, which Sean has copies of, about why women of color, why people of color should support the Corbyn-McDonnell movement. They did that. And fundamentally, it's there for you. It's a very thoughtful and thought-out statement. It's not just the praise of the movement. And we ourselves have said that we all must be in the Corbyn-McDonnell movement, not because it's anti-racist, but because we have to make it anti-racist. It is not anti-racist yet. How can it be when people who criticize Israel are accused of anti-Semitism? Israel is an apartheid state. You cannot be anti-racist and be Zionist. I am a Jewish woman. They can't accuse me of anti-Semitism, and they can call me a self-hating Jewess if they like. They've done it before. It really hasn't had much impact. The point is that we have to always find our points of reference, not only in our own sector, but in other sectors. I mean, we need help, and we're useful. We're useful at the Global Women's Strike because these sectors are represented by people that have proven themselves over years. And we really can be used by the movement. We love it. But ultimately, people of color have to get themselves together, and they do in any number of ways. You know, and now we have a wonderful chance because the royalty is multiracial. You know, this is a treat beyond my wildest dream. It's really going to mean a lot because that woman is not ready to hide her mother, who is a Black woman, and that's a very good sign. And I don't know what she's going to do. Are they going to invite Trump to the wedding? You know, all of these good questions are being posed. But ultimately, we have to find out, and this is terribly important, the history of people of color. One of the things that has happened in the last 20 or 30 years is that imperialism and the British Empire have been cleaned up to be perfectly respectable. No, we have to absolutely say we are anti-imperialist, and we, as grassroots people in the UK, didn't get anything out of it. They never gave us the money. In the 1930s, when the British Empire was at its height, children in the north of England were walking barefoot in the snow because their parents had no money to put shoes on their feet. You know, Ken Loach has done this film, The Spirit of 45. It's not the most wonderful film in the world, but it is a wonderful documentary about what British people did not get from the British Empire.
So I'm here today with Ms. Sarah MAYO, and obviously based on the amazing speech that we've just heard and the questioning, etc., I would like to ask you, are we as a society then setting up women for failure?
That's a really good question, and I think the simple short answer is yes, but the reasons why, of course, are much longer and complex. But basically, in terms of society, I mean, if the context here, the UK in particular, but also I think it's true generally internationally, that women are devalued, females are devalued, and we are taught specifically, I'd say, in sort of westernised societies that are, very corporate driven, for women to devalue our bodies and to feel that we're inadequate, as if the female being by itself is never good enough. So, from, I'm sure you can relate yourself, but from childhood, really, we're taught that, it's important that as girls, we care about appearance, that kind of thing, and that's kind of, or our capacity to become mothers and things like that. And whilst obviously I have absolutely no problem with anyone having children, what I do have an issue with is a society, particularly I'd say the cosmetic industry and advertising, and social forces like that, we kind of like, as soon as a girl starts to enter puberty, which, for girls can start at a very young age. My sister, for example, was 9, I was 11. As a society, there's so much shame built into that. So even like sanitation pads and what you call them, you know what I mean, tampons, they're bleached white, which is actually quite dangerous for women, and I believe there's been some research that it's even carcinogenic, but it's like based on that kind of idea that, the bleeding is something you need to hide and is something sinful and that kind of thing. I mean, even my own personal experience, when I first had a period when I was 11, but I was so ashamed. I didn't tell any of my friends for about a year and a half later. That's madness, but that was, and then, it's just always the jokes, this kind of thing, or schoolyard jokes about, oh, she's moody, she's this, that kind of stuff, and then just like the shame that we feel about our bodies, like so many of us have suffered from dysphoria with our bodies, think, oh, we're not good enough, all that kind of stuff. So many insecurities, which I think are manufactured. And I think also as well, that is kind of related to a society that basically devalues women's labour. And so much of it, as was said tonight by Selma, unpaid, unrecognised, whether that's obviously the biggest labour of all is in the name, labour, giving birth to a child. That's the source of it, and that is... And, for women, I still think even in the UK today that there's not a real choice about these issues in terms of women and our fertility, and whether we want to have children or not, that's not within our control, because there's so much employment discrimination against pregnant women, like so many cases of women being sacked because they're pregnant, employers discriminating against women, who disclose they might want to have children, and that is just obscene, but it's happening in 21st century Britain. I think recently in London there was some mothers were marching about this issue, about lack of employment or rights, because there's so many cases, it's illegal, but it's happening, of women losing their jobs because they have babies, and then the impact that has on women, because when you have to, quite often then women will take the time out of the workforce to raise the child, at least part-time, but that punishes women, because once you get to pension age, especially now the pension is based on a career average, well, a lot of women will have significant periods of time where they were either not in workplace, or doing part-time, And you know, that's going to leave you in poverty at an old age, and it reinforces women's economic dependence on men when it's meant to be the 21st century. And if you are like myself, you know, I'm not married, I've won that right thanks to the, you know, the previous feminist struggles and stuff. But for me, as someone who's basically not married, I'm self-sufficient, I have to support myself. That means I can't afford to have children. I think that's as unfair as anything else. And then, of course, because we live in this world where there's a lack of choice, a lack of childcare being cut all over the place, you know, that means there are quite often powerful economic, social, cultural reasons why women need access to abortion. That's been cut. Access to reproductive treatment is cut. You know, so for couples who want to conceive, it's very difficult. You know, and so for women, I think society, particularly the operations of modern day 21st century capitalism, it's not business friend. You know, they see women as, you know, we're a source of great profit, but we do not get the payment in kind.
Great loss as well. So, you know, they want us to produce the slaves, but they're not doing a lot to support us along the way in any way, are they?
And then just with women's health as well, I think there's just so many issues there, like you said. I mean, one about, you know, for how important it is, I think, for young girls, but also boys as well, to have a proper education about what the material realities of this, that there's nothing to be ashamed of by the fact that we bleed, or late in life you might go through you know, all the different hormonal changes and things that we experience, and just to have, as a society, to have some respect for women in terms of just we're great as we are, to be honest. And, you know, that we don't need to inject collagen and surgery or whatever to improve ourselves. That's not necessary. It's not medically necessary. I mean, it might be for some people psychologically, and I'm not judging anyone who's done it, but all I'm saying is that as a society, it'd be much more beautiful if we could all encourage like self-acceptance and self-love, and for women in particular. Obviously there are guys who can face insecurities because they don't conform to male roles, but overall I think women, you know, we want to change society in our direction.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Sarah.
That's okay. Thank you, Jessica.
The first thing is, we built a women's centre without any money. We were first of all in a squat for 17 years where we paid a peppercorn rent that Ken Livingston had given us when he was the chair of the housing committee in Camden Council, which is northwest London. And we got a grant, I think it was £2,000. We were so astonished. Nobody ever gave us anything. We were demanding money from the state. They hated us. And not only that, we were fighting with the police because of the racism that they showed to people that we were connected with, or people who came to us for help. Well, those people didn't get any money. The people who got money were those women who invited the police onto their committee. How can you deal with rape with the police who neglect the women on your committee? That's what we have faced in the so-called feminist movement, and I'm not sorry to be able to say it. But we had nothing, but everything that we got, it never went for wages for one individual. Never, never. We said this is movement money, and we will share in it to the degree that we can in order to eat regularly if possible.